Through his office window, Jesse, a hotel manager in a city, had observed for days a little boy, about 7 years old, who used to show up outside the hotel every day. At first, Jesse didn't make much of the boy, and he always mistook him for a homeless kid who just loved hanging around the hotel to beg for money. However, there was something special about the boy. Never once had Jesse ever seen the boy begging for money or food. Every day, the little boy always showed up at the hotel's ground at noon and always left by 4:30 p.m. every evening. Though not smartly dressed, the little boy was always neat. Most of his clothes were oversized, and he always wore an old baseball cap. With him, the little boy always carried an old thoroughly patched-up backpack, and from it, whenever he sat down on the hard floor, Jesse always saw the little boy fish out a medium-sized drawing book, and he would get busy scribbling something on the book. When choosing his preferred sitting spot outside the hotel, the little boy seemed to have two objectives in his mind. One, he always chose a position in which he could clearly see all the food that was being served in the hotel, and two, from his sitting position, he had to have a clear view of the hotel's parking lot. Each time a customer was served a particular dish, or a car got parked at the parking lot, the little boy would get busy scribbling at his drawing book for minutes, before raising his head up with satisfaction as he admired whatever he had scribbled. Some days, using an old paint container as his lunchbox, the little boy used to have some parked lunch, mostly 2 slices of bread, and other times he didn't have any lunch at all. Being the hotel manager, Jesse had tried severally to ask his employees to serve free food to the boy, but no matter how delicious it looked, the little boy always rejected the food politely. Of all the customers who visited the hotel, no one showed any interest in the boy. In fact, his presence always went unnoticed or totally ignored. However, the little boy also never made any effort to get noticed, as he was always comfortable with his own space. Finally, in the evening, for 30 p.m. to be specific, the boy would pack his bag and leave to an unknown destination, before returning the next day in his usual hours. All this, Jesse had observed for days. So one day, Jesse's curiosity got out of hand, and he decided that he would secretly follow the little boy that evening to know exactly where he came from and what his business was at the hotel's grounds. That evening, when the little boy left, Jesse trailed him, keeping a safe distance. In his mind, Jesse thought that the little boy lived somewhere near the town, and so he had not anticipated that he would be walking for long. But to his surprise, the little boy trekked for almost 10 miles, before arriving in a shanty house on the outskirts of the city. By now, it was 6:30 p.m. On arrival in their tiny compound, the little boy was warmly welcomed by a crippled boy about his age, who was riding on a homemade wooden wheelchair. By looking at him, one could think that the handicapped boy had been waiting for the little boy's arrival for ages, as he was so excited to see him. The two boys hugged each other cutely for minutes, before the little boy proceeded to give his drawing book to the crippled boy. Together, as they happily perused through the book, the little boy went ahead to explain to the boy on the wheelchair about the contents in the book as vividly as he could. From his hiding spot behind some thickets, Jesse could see how the crippled boy was happy as the two went through the book. Minutes later, a very old woman, who was probably 90 years old, came out of the house and handed the two boys some food on a single plate. Jesse watched in awe as the two boys happily shared the meal. They even took turns to spoon-feed each other, as they laughed heartily. By now, darkness was fast approaching, and Jesse had to get back to the city as soon as possible. However, before leaving, to make his efforts worthwhile, Jesse decided to visit the little boy's home, get to know about his family, and then return to the city. When he knocked at their door, Jesse was welcomed heartily by the old woman. The house had no seats, and so he had to sit on some old sacks on the floor. The walls had big holes that had been sealed with old clothes, the roof was almost caving in, and the family was using an old lamp for lighting. On the wall hung an old picture with the phrase, "God bless our home," written on it. The two boys sat in one corner staring hard at Jesse, and from their stare, one could easily tell that the two had never seen a visitor in their house. In what looked like a tiny bottle that had been cut into half and used as a cup, Jesse was served sugarless porridge by the old woman, who was by now curious to know the intent of his visit. As he sipped through his porridge, Jesse went ahead and explained to the old lady the reason for his visit, and that's when, like a new day, the truth dawned on him. The old lady was the little boy's grandmother, and the crippled boy was his twin brother. The boys' parents had died when they were little kids, and so their poor grandma had to take up the role of raising them. They lived in abject poverty, but they survived each day by hoping that everything would work out for them one day. Since his brother was crippled and couldn't travel to the city, the little boy, who was a precocious realist, would visit the hotel grounds every day to try and draw all the things he saw in the city, the food, cars, people, etc. He would then bring the pictures to his brother, to try and show him how the city looked like. At this point, Jesse took a look at the little boy's drawing book, and he was shocked to see how perfect the kid was when it came to drawing. His drawing skills would rival those of Leonardo da Vinci. The little boy had drawn Jesse's entire hotel, including the staff and cars in the parking lot, without missing even the tiniest of the details. The little boy's love for his crippled brother evoked Jesse's emotions, and he couldn't stop himself from crying. He couldn't imagine how the little boy used to walk for 20 miles every day, sometimes even without food, just to draw pictures of the city for his brother. Before he left, Jesse asked the little boy why he had always declined food served to him at the hotel, and the little boy replied that he didn't want to take the food because he didn't know how he was to come and explain to his brother that he ate some sweet food in the city. He explained that since sweetness can't be drawn, he didn't want to explain to his brother something that he couldn't see. Jesse then asked him why then didn't he take the food, put it in his lunchbox, and come share it with his brother. To this question, the little boy replied that he didn't want to do it, because the day he would come home without the food, his twin brother would maybe think that he ate the sweet food all by himself that day. These replies left Jesse's eyes teary, and he promised to build them a decent house, and take the two kids to the top schools in the city. On his way home, Jesse kept meditating on the two biggest lessons he had learned from the little boy. 1. Happiness is free, and you don't need to own much to be happy. And 2. A cup of water may not mean much to you, but for a person living in a desert, that's a treasure.